I'll just offer some feedback.
You're not there yet. Okay, so you've added another thing other than geography, pedagogy, parental education. Now we're talking about organisational factors and also the student body itself. And in fact, you're talking about one or two very difficult children. And I remember being in a school somewhere in Fitzroy where one family left with 3 children and the staff morale measure went up by 3, almost a standard deviation in the following year, because those 3 children went out terrorising everybody in the yard, you know, and in classrooms. So you're right, it can have enormous impact. I'm interested, and I'd like to talk about later, about the peer observation, because in terms of what we've been discussing here, I've got a list coming up, like things like the letters to parents, dialogue booklets, and likewise now peer observation. I'd be interested to know what happens to staff when someone walks in terms of, like, the calmness factor would be the first thing I'd be interested in, because I'd say that would introduce it much more strongly. And even the language factor, things like hinting ultimately, the logic of the statements, etc., etc. So that's something that people, I reckon, next year or so have got to somehow think about strongly. How are you going to support staff? Because it's not accountability at this point, it's simply support. And we're not talking accountability, we're talking support for staff who really want to say things in a way that may be more productive. How are you going to assist them? First of all, how are they going to get the data? Because the research shows their self-reflection isn't going to get them there. So I have very little confidence in data from teachers, because the research shows it's very difficult for them actually to know exactly what they're doing when they're doing it. It's far too complicated a job. So how are you going to get that information to them in a way that's not threatening but is genuinely supportive? That would be the next challenge, I reckon, in the coming year, because that's part of the feedback. The feedback can be for the improvement. That's a very nice form of feedback. But then in the individual level, it would be nice to know, or even at a school level, how many staff are sort of hinting, how many staff are using intermediate steps, how many staff, you know, are separating the child from the behaviour, are saying positive things to challenging children, all this sort of stuff. And you'll get that, I reckon, by some of these visits, because if they can't do it when someone's in the room, they probably can't do it. And so they'll make every effort to do it when someone's in the room, and you'll know. And I think that's got to make a difference itself. Once you've done it, even though it's because someone was in the room, you know you do it and you can do it and you know what to do. And you may even see the impact of it. That itself would encourage you. So that's something else that we'd need to consider. By the end of it, I'm going to have a nice long list. So I won't have to visit anybody. I'll just have this list and I'll mail it out and say, think about some of this stuff, you know. Okay.